Welcome back to a brand new TV show spoiler review here on Max Talks Movies. My name is Max Dindenberg. Today, I am breaking down the final three episodes 4 through 6 of the new Disney Plus Marvel show Ironheart, which just wrapped up this past Wednesday. So again, I'm Max Dindenberg from Max Talks Movies. If you're new to the channel, guys, please hit that subscribe button and ring that bell for notifications. I talk all things movies, TV, box office. I do also out-of-theater reactions and movie franchise rankings. So please subscribe, ring the bell if you're new to the channel. Comment down below. What are your thoughts on the final three episodes of Ironheart? Where does this rank for you in the MCU after the ending of the show? What do you think is next for these characters, and where do you think they'll show up next in the MCU? I'd love to have your thoughts down in the comment section down below. And also, guys, please hit the thumbs up button. So going into this, again, if you're not familiar, I did a spoiler review last week for episodes 1 through 3. And I was not a big fan of those 3 episodes. Not thinking that was the worst thing that Marvel has ever done on Disney Plus, but it clearly wasn't one of the best attempts they have done. And I was more negative than positive. So I wasn't that excited going into these final 3 episodes. And I'll say my opinion really hasn't changed on the whole. I do think the last 10 minutes of the final episode did leave me wanting more from a lot of these characters. But the problem is here, I have no idea where any of these characters are showing up again in future MCU projects. So it makes it very weary on the future of not just an Ironheart show, but any of these characters returning again. I think there's one character who clearly will return again in other things, and we'll get into that toward the end of the video, but very interesting to see. So again, full spoilers. If you've not seen the entire 6 episode run of Ironheart, go watch on Disney Plus, then come back here to join me for the spoiler review. So because it's 3 episodes, I'm just going to give general spoilers, not breaking down episode by episode. But I really want to get into the 4 and 5 kind of together here, episodes 4 and 5. So Parker suspects that Riri basically, and even though she didn't kill John in episode 3, she left him for dead. Parker suspects that Riri is the one who killed her, and that's why he sends the whole heist team after her towards the end of the series, especially in episode 5. But then the heist team starts to realize that the Eric Andre character, Parker killed him off, and they want kind of off the teams. Now Parker is alone, but he still is trying to. The big twist in episode 5 is Parker has been trying to rip off his father the entire time. We get a good twist scene there in episode 5. And we realized that, he talks about with his father how his father left him for adoption when he was 12, and he's had all this money, and he still didn't have time for him, so he's trying to rip him off and get all of his money and assets. So that was, I thought, an interesting twist. Parker became more interesting as the show went on. Obviously, Anthony Ramos is very good, but the character, at least, was the second most interesting thing on the show, I think, in its entire run. So that did help. And Riri is trying to build a iron suit mixture of, Iron Man like tech, as well as sorcerer magic with the friend of Riri's mom's daughter. And we learned that she's a sorcerer. So they are trying to put the suit because they realize that the hood is not from this dimension, basically. So they need to fight. They can't just use Iron Man tech to beat Parker. But as this is happening, the big cliffhanger in episode 5 is that they lose the AI, the Natalie character, the AI version of Natalie in that episode. And now she has to go on this whole revenge, I guess, for Riri in episode 6 without Natalie. From Ezekiel's perspective, he kind of becomes like a cyborg-like character with electricity. He wants to go after Riri, even though, again, I hated what they did with the Riri and Ezekiel stuff in episode 4, where it was all Riri's fault why Ezekiel was ever shown to the public and thrown in prison. And when she visits him for the first time, she's like joking and making all these like 2 or 3 jokes in a row, while there's a guy who it's her fault is in prison. Made her just so insufferably unlikable. And I was completely on Zeke's side throughout the entire series. I think Alden Ehrenreich was the best performance out of the main group of characters on the show. So I'd like to see him maybe continue on. But he was about to kill Riri, doesn't, leaves her alive. Didn't really make a lot of sense why he kept her alive. But then they have a big fight in episode 6. She helps him, knocks the puppeteering element of Parker's control over him. And that leads to the fact that he still wants revenge on Riri, which again didn't really make a lot of sense. Where he's like, we still have unfinished business. Then why didn't he kill her in episode 5? It just, nothing really at times makes sense here. But moving on to episode 6 is when we get the big culmination of the show, which is this supposedly big fight between Riri and Parker. But the beginning of the episode is a flashback to when Parker and John were trying to rip off Parker's father for the first time. And we get introduced to Sacha Baron Cohen as Mephisto, who became the best performance on the show. He goes in and out of different accents depending on the situation that he is in. And it was a very unique, different performance the MCU has not seen before. And I do think Mephisto is a good fit moving forward. I think out of all the characters who have like a good future for the MCU, I think clearly Mephisto is one. He's been, again, heavily rumored all the way back since the very first Disney Plus show with WandaVision back in 2020. He was referenced once in Agatha All Along, but we haven't seen this version of Mephisto yet in the MCU. Again, the show was filmed nearly 3 years ago, and there were already reports then that Sacha Baron Cohen was Mephisto. So it wasn't like a major surprise. Again, he showed up, unless you forgot these reports, which again did come out towards the end of 2022. But he's the one who gives Parker the hood. Parker wants to be rich and a king, but he wants kind of Mephisto to do all this for him. While Mephisto is saying, I'll give you the tools to be able to get the wealth. But that doesn't go well because Parker loses the hood to Riri in a very quick fight. I thought they built up this whole show for this one big fight scene. Riri does like a fake hologram scene to trick him into looking in a different direction, and she just steals the hood and leaves. I found it to be very underwhelming, this fight. The biggest problem for Parker, he has good motivation. You can see his perspective on society, where he fits in, but he just was never a threat. He had the hood, but again, to Riri, he just was never a threat. And I thought that was the biggest thing holding the show back at times, was you just didn't feel the threat presence really until this finale, where you had Mephisto. Even before that, Parker was like, I need Mephisto, I need more power. He said, if you keep the hood from Riri, you'll get that power, but obviously he does not. So that sets up this big conversation. I thought the best part of the show, the last 10 minutes, which is this conversation with Riri and Mephisto. And they're cutting back and forth between Riri talking to Natalie. And you think this is kind of like a dream of what this deal would be between Mephisto and Riri, where Natalie's back, but now it's not an AI. It's actually Natalie who forgets the events of her death. And now Riri has her friend back from the dead, not in AI form, but in actual human form. And it felt like a very villainous thing. So the whole time I was thinking Riri would just decline this deal, because again, she feels like, again, the hero of the show. But the big twist is she does take Mephisto up on this deal. The one thing that she can't get over in her life is the friend who died years ago. And the show becomes the tragedy, really, of Riri Williams. We kind of got her origin story set in stone with a mixture of this and Wakanda Forever. But we get this really tragedy arc for her where, yes, she's very unlikable, which I thought was easily the worst part of the show, making the lead character so unlikable. But they did set the table for her to be willing to accept Mephisto's deal. And then the last shot before the post-credit scene is her hugging Natalie back from the dead, and then her getting the mark on her arm. So again, I don't know where this goes from a Ironheart perspective, where she is next in the MCU. Mephisto seems like he could be someone who is a part of either the 2 Avengers movies or the next Spider-Man film, because that next Spider-Man film, that comic that they're basing that off of, was Mephisto was a big part of it. So we could see him popping up there. But there's just no future for really outside of Mephisto, any of these characters. The post-credit scene is Parker going into the shop with the sorcerer, and he wants more power, and that's where we end on. So don't really know. Again, overall, I think this is a very disappointing series. Again, I think it's better than Echo, She-Hulk, Secret Invasion. But again, that is such a low bar for MCU TV shows. And you can feel just how not confident this Marvel was on the show, releasing 3 episodes 1 week, and now we're already 2 weeks in, and the show is already over. It's gotten very negative reviews. I don't think this is a very good show. The problem is the writing. Everyone was so unlikable, and I found myself struggling to root for anyone really other than Zeke, who is a privileged guy who has all this millions of dollars worth of weapons, and he got screwed over more than anyone else on the series. And I felt like that wasn't supposed to be the goal, where I'm just rooting for this guy instead of caring about the Williams family or Parker. I just didn't find myself caring about these characters, and Riri was very unlikable. It didn't really make sense how she built this iron suit from like this car. Didn't really make a lot of sense. The fight towards the end, it was weird where the fourth and fifth episodes were over 50 minutes long, and then the finale was 40 minutes with credits. So really like a 30-minute episode. And it felt very rushed. But Mephisto was great, stole the show in the finale, and that led me some more exciting. So I don't think this is the worst MCU product they have put out in 15 years, but I do think this is definitely on the tier of the worst MCU shows they have done. And again, the unclear future makes this also very frustrating. So what are your thoughts on Ironheart? Let me know down in the comments, like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys very, very soon.